Double check. Hopefully this all comes out fine because this is the first podcast recording with Windows 11. Knock on wood. Hopefully Microsoft does not screw us over.
Knock on wood, pound on metal.
Oh. There we go. Metal part covered. Okay.
Punch plastic.
Oh, that's plastic.
What's your computer case made out of?
Aluminum.
Oh, okay.
Let me see. All right.
That's essentially how I feel about life. Full of loneliness and misery and suffering and unhappiness. And it's all over much too quickly. The question is, have I learned anything about life?
Hello, everybody. Zane's gonna come here, your host for episode 11 of season 2 of EOZ After Dark. I'm joined here with an studious co-host, Andy Pyrana Baldwin. Andy, it's been a hot minute, sir. How have you been?
It has been the hottest of minutes. I've been doing well. We're rolling into the holiday season, so everything is getting a little frantic, but I can't complain, honestly.
That's good. Not the hectic part, but the, no need to complain things. So, yeah. I, on the other hand, have had a very exhausting 7 days. 8 if you include today, but today is actually not a day that continues on with the problems. So, for any viewers / listeners out there who may have watched the previous stream of me and Ryan playing Back for Blood, may have noticed I was an extra bit of salty in that streaming session. And that's because at the time, I was dealing with a leak in my apartment, and it wasn't fun. Needless to say, it's been taken care of, but a lot of things got pushed back. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully, future events, I'm not as salty. The delays that people can expect affects both channels, EOZ, EOG. There was a set of anime-related videos that I'm now going to have to redo because of they were time-sensitive. So now, if I release them currently, they kind of have. It seems like I'm talking about stuff that is not known, even though it's now known. And the same thing for the EOG videos. Celeste, actually, a few episodes of Celeste are ready for release, but I want to actually add a bit more on the stockpile. And there are a few more videos that I will not mention fully what they are because they have yet to start in terms of their series just yet. So I'll just leave that be. For those who have been keeping up with games / remasters that have been releasing lately, can probably assume 1 or 2 of them. But nevertheless, also, we will have another story in today's episode kind of tying into one of these reasons. But a lot of the EOZ content is now also going to be uploaded to the platform known as Odyssey, which is the rebranded name for the server's library, LBRY. We'll get into a bit of rationale behind that shortly. Just know YouTube is in a state of flux, for lack of better terms. But yeah, moving on to another quick topic, I want to say please protect your data. I was informed today about some inside information in regards to two-factor authentication and why you should use it, because obviously in today's day and age, with as advanced as technology has gotten, with as much as our personal data is on the internet, as much as we interact with our cell phones, computers, and etc., two-factor authentication is the best way to ensure that your account is safe and secure. But sadly, even a step further, if you have the option to select your type of two-factor authentication, 2FA, do not use the SMS text messaging system. It is seen as an increase of SIM spoofing, which is essentially is normally in reality just someone socially engineering your information to convince your cellular provider that they are you and that they are trying to switch to a new phone. And if they can actually convince your provider with enough information that they're you, they can essentially reroute all your text messages to a new device, including that of two-factor authentication, SMS type of authentication. So just please keep that in mind. Sorry to kind of get a little too technical there, but it is what it is. Also, would like to announce that this is today's first episode recording the podcast session while utilizing Windows 11. We'll have dedicated videos and bits about my experiences with it. In summary, I'm enjoying most of it, but there are a lot of decisions that I just cannot see why they were made by the Microsoft UI design team, because they should have learned a lot of stuff from Windows 10. It angers me and it frustrates me that some of the decisions that they made via UI made it into Windows 11 when enough people have lambasted Microsoft about certain decisions. But I digress.
We know what we like.
Yes. And again, I've mentioned in previous episodes of the podcast, if you're going to make changes, cool, that's fine. Changes happen, that's way of life. Have options. Have options. Options makes the world better. And for another quick news topic, NFTs. We're not going to go into deep with those. I don't want to spark a bit of outrage, but I do want to make some quick points because I see a lot of people getting a lot of misinformation about NFTs. So first and foremost, the concept of right-clicking an NFT image and saving it means you own an NFT. No, it doesn't. You're just saving an image, a copy, but in terms of ownership, no. The idea behind the value of NFTs is no different than the value that people place on various different art pieces or hobbies, such as Pokemon cards, baseball cards, other types of card collectors, etc. It's just that those are physical, NFTs are digital. That is literally it. And I do want to preface that I am not a big fan of NFTs for various different reasons, but that point aside, the concept behind them are nothing foreign. A lot of people will say, but they're just digital bits of virtual data. Well, yes, but you have unique identifiers for those virtual bits of data, and that's what makes them quote unquote unique. When people say that, well, if I just right click and save the image, don't I just own it? No, because just like how you have a physical painting of the Mona Lisa, somebody can create a copy, a digital copy, take a picture of it, reprint it, etc. You can have a copy of the Mona Lisa, but the actual original does not belong to you. And the same case kind of goes for NFTs as well, just in a digital/virtual concept. Lastly, on the quick topics, we have some Path of Exile changes.
Some bad news.
Yeah. Fill us in on this one, Andy.
After years of hanging out and changing all of our fates, it was decided by Grinding Gear Gaming to remove Navali as one of the mentors. She doesn't really fit the game anymore in terms of like how she interacts with the game. Prophecies are cool, but they're taking them out. So,
I have
we bid Navali a fair farewell.
Oh, Captain, my Captain.
And yep. Gonna be missed, especially because that content was being introduced basically about when we started playing the game, as I recall.
Yes.
Right? Wasn't Prophecy like the first or second league that we did?
I think second or third, but pretty still early on. Yeah.
Yeah, really early. So she has a special place in our hearts, but apparently not in our hard drives.
I really hope Triple G, Grinding Gear Games, at least keeps the character and reintroduces her again at a later point in time with new voice acting, because I love the voice actress work with that character, the sound, the lines given. So I just hope we get to see her again in a different light. I would like to say I find all of this really strange, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Suspect.
Yes, that this happens right after the massive meme increase of the orb that became popular. For those who do not know the meme, I'll put a picture on the video version of the podcast now, but it's essentially just an old man looking into a blue orb that came from, I believe, D&D. I'm just
and of course,
orbing.
There's always the AGDQ orb. Because in Super Mario Bros. 3, you can end a game by collecting an orb of inscrutable nature, and it always sparks an orb from the crowd.
The more you know. Okay, moving into our general topics, and I will preface the audience and the viewers that today's episode is a bit of a chunky one. I don't think it's going to be as chunky as previous episode, though. Just keep that in mind. Was told by one of our constant listeners that the last episode, which was almost 2 hours long, he finished it before his car ride ended with him, getting home. And I was like, okay, either your car ride is just that long and I feel sorry for you, or two, you were listening to it on a faster speed. Sure enough, it's both. Long car drive, as well as he was listening to, I think, like 1.25 or 1.5 speed. So, fun. The topic today, though, the general topic, is more so about YouTube, and the reason, or one of many reasons why I'm trying to push our content to multiple platforms to act as not just a safety net, but to ensure that in case anything does happen to a video due to copyright claim abuse, that the video will still be uploaded somewhere. I will also preface that in the future, I am trying to design certain things around in-house hosting. But for the most part, because of cost and manpower, we're leaving most of the hosting to YouTube and other platforms such as Odyssey/Library. But YouTube is in the hot water currently. The first input is due to they removed the dislike button counter. So you cannot tell how many people dislike the video. So you can no longer see the ratio of likes to dislikes. And Andy, I gotta ask you, do you have any personal preference around this change?
So in general, I actually like the change because you don't really need to know that sort of information as somebody who's just browsing. Like if you're the video owner, you can still see it, but we're just browsing. You don't need that information. It could be used for making snap decisions about whether or not to watch something, but other than that, and I view that as a minor perk. So taking that away basically discourages mass downvoting for the sake of, the video is unpopular, we will make it more unpopular sort of thing. Dogpiling, mob mentality sort of thing. But honestly, it feels like there was very little merit to it existing, but it also feels like there's very little merit to taking it away. It's good to have a binary system, but the end result on the side is going to be only very mildly felt. Also, you can still view it on if you had a YouTube app on your phone and you didn't update it. If you turn off manual or if you turn off automatic updates, you can still see them. So. I do have one serious regret though, and that is that there is a very specific video called Neutral Response. I see you know what that is.
I don't, but from that name of the title, I assume it's kind of like was it a video that tried to have 50% likes and dislikes?
So here's what's interesting. It's a YouTube video. It's called Neutral Response. It's a clip from Futurama where a dude stands up and he says, "I have no strong feelings one way or the other."
I love that guy.
That video, until recently, had a perfect like to dislike ratio. Even when they started rounding it, because it used to be that you could see exactly how many like and exactly how many dislike votes there were. Then they started rounding it, but you could still look it up. Now it's gone, but neutral responses claim to fame was that the like and dislike buttons were not only perfectly ratioed, but it also the video is from 2009. The video didn't request having a perfectly ratioed like button. You know, that like nothing about it said to do this. It's just it's a really interesting and strange like
case study
sort
on
of
the internet.
blossoming of cooperation that just sort of manifested onto YouTube, right? And there's like a 10-minute video like looking at the the kind of social contract that kind of had to develop naturally about the video. There's like a 10-minute video about that. Just like, how did this happen? You know, there's a new video. I'm scrolling down right now. There's a new video 2 weeks ago that showed the perfectly ratioed like to dislike button for the final time. Wow. And the last time it was recorded, before they took away the dislike visibility, the video had 570,944 likes and dislikes.
Nice. Insert
and now
Thanos
that's gone.
meme
We'll
here.
never have it again. That's my actual complaint. That's my actual grievance with this change.
I think that's a fair grievance.
It took away my neutral response. It took away 12 years of work.
Hearing about this video and seeing it, I showed it for the video version of the podcast. I think the internet is both great and horrible, right? And that's one of the instances of something just completely random, stupid, but great that derives from it, right? I think 10 years from now, hopefully somebody in college or some type of form of educational institution will do a case study on just the effects of random people on the internet going, I like this, let's do this, without any form of actual coordination. It legitimately becomes a hive mind type of reaction, and it's hilarious and kind of scary.
It's neat. It's just neat.
Yeah. I will say I'm kind of in the same boat as you in the general senses of like it doesn't do much to remove it. It also doesn't do much to keep it. I think where I kind of draw a line of irritation from YouTube, that is their quote unquote reasoning behind getting rid of it is to try to protect content creators from having dislike bombs. But the thing is, so like disliking a video actually adds to the benefit of its discovery, right? A dislike is equally as great as a like in the algorithm, the almighty algorithm that everyone is trying to always try to game the system.
Is that true?
Yes. Oh, at some points it was true. I don't know if they had changed it anytime recently to not reflect that, but generally for like the last, I want to say 3, 4, or 5 years, if you disliked the video, it counted as interaction, and it made your video say that, oh, people are interacting even if they liked or disliked it. And so it boosted it in terms of promotion.
I think it boosted it in a different way because I believe that videos that you dislike, the algorithm is discouraged from showing you more content from that content creator.
Yes, for you personally, but in terms of like other users who have yet to see it.
Right. I'm just saying I don't think it's quite the same thing.
True, but I'm talking about in like just the
regardless.
Yeah, broader terms. So the reason why they say they wanted to remove it was to prevent the dislike bombing, which is all fine. But they say that dislike bombing is what is causing toxicity on YouTube, and that is simply not the case. The comment section, for example, is a far more problematic place and a far more problematic zone for YouTube content creators and just YouTube consumers than the like or dislike button ever was. And granted, if they had to quote unquote make a public move to try to solve this issue, I'm glad they did something that wasn't like just nuke the comment section, because it's more of a difficult thing to, and I don't want to use the word choice of like policing, but like, no, like, okay, comment section is there for a reason. Cool. If you have a lot of toxicity going in the comment section, then hopefully the content creator can create or set up the moderators properly and set up guidelines and constraints for their channel to automatically flag certain word choice, certain phrases, and ban certain users particularly. Again,
and of course, the content creator can also just nuke the comment section themselves.
Yes, disabling comments is always an option for a content creator, and as some people will say, is a cowardly move. I disagree. I think it's a case-by-case scenario, and I will honestly never fault a content creator for disabling the comments if they see.
I can't even. I used to be in a similar mentality where it was just like, well, why would you silence something, when you can just take the whatever is being said and there may be some value there, or something that you can derive from it. I used to think that. Now I think, why would you put up with nonsense if you don't have to put up with nonsense?
Yep.
If you're surrounded by nonsense, you don't need to deal with the nonsense. You can shut down the nonsense.
Yep.
It is, life is not a contest of whoever has the thickest skin wins. If you don't like what's flying at you, you have abilities to to quash it. That's the word I'm looking for. And I do not think that it is cowardly to do so. You have tools at your disposal, and you should use them.
Agreed. And for those who say, well, if you're going to put something out on the internet, then you need to accept the fact that you're opening yourself up to criticism. Yeah, and you can criticize somebody without like them actually reading it or seeing it, right? So, if
you can also criticize somebody without, curb stomping them.
Yes. And if you have an issue of not being able to comment on a video, your best bet, no longer watch that person's videos. It's really that simple. Everyone has an opinion, but and I think everyone knows what that saying kind of ends up with, which is like, sometimes you can keep it to yourself or just keep things moving. But I digress. One of the other reasons why YouTube is in hot waters is due to the copyright strike system being abused. Now, this is nothing new. YouTube has had the copyright system be abused by actual official companies and groups and identities, as well as fraudulent people claiming to be these official individuals and etc. Now, within the YouTube anime community, we saw one of the biggest providers, or one of the biggest creators in that sphere, basically be hit with something massive. Overnight, Toei Animation, the animation company behind publishing things like One Piece, Dragon Ball, and just other big anime, manually flagged over 250 videos of the content creator Totally Not Mark, claiming that he overstepped the boundaries and used copyrighted material. Now, I've watched Totally Not Mark's videos personally. They are in the frame of transformative creations utilizing the fair use. Now, I understand that fair use is often mispromoted and saying that if you say anything other than something about something, that you can show everything. That's not honestly true. But to Totally Mark's credit, as well as his team's credit, they were actually pretty concise with what they showed, how they showed it, and even went the route of sometimes using custom art that they created and completely per video with no other materials from the actual source being used. And even in those videos that do not have any anime clips, no manga images, no still clips from the anime, but just complete voiceover with custom art. And sometimes not even of real characters from the anime. Even those got flagged and pulled for copyright claims, right? And people are saying that this is showing that YouTube will allow big companies to essentially bully individuals like Totally Not Mark, even when the cases aren't actually set up to be valid in terms of their copyright claim. And if you're thinking, well, why don't he just dispute them? He is, but YouTube's tool set does not allow for multiple videos to be disputed as a whole. So now he has to manually go in one video at a time for over 250 videos, type up the reasoning, rationale, and prove that, like, this does not fall under copyright claiming, and essentially go through this whole rigmarole that in the last step will be a 30-day challenge for a company who has created the copyright claim to take it to court if they so wish. But oftentimes they don't. They just wait those 30 days, and then when everything kind of settles out and the video is restored, not only has that video's momentum been lost, they'll then just copyright claim it once more, and the situation repeats. So it is definitely not a simple situation, but it's showing a lot of problems that YouTube has with their system, their platform, and how certain things can be overly abused. So,
as you can probably imagine, a YouTube search of, quote, YouTube copyright gets videos that have been released recently addressing this issue. But is it okay if I pitch another channel real quick?
Sure.
So there's a year-old video that is, because I think we've touched on this before, but this is not the disease. This is just a symptom, right? Like the hundreds of videos getting taken down and so forth and so on, right? Mm-hmm. This is an effect of a larger problem, which is copyright, right? Like, YouTube has this system set up, and it's kind of archaic, but it needs to be, because YouTube needs to protect itself from getting sued by, like, the government, right? Or, like thousands of companies. So there is a video out there, and if you want to learn more about this sort of thing, because as much as I can be like, yeah, this is terrible, I hate this, blah, it sucks, this is not a surprise. This is not like, this is old hat at this point. This is expected, especially with Toei. Toei is aggressive as hell about this stuff, as well they should be. I'm not even faulting Toei, because again, copyright is a nightmare. And if you don't, and this actually, we're going to touch on this again later when we talk about It Takes Two. If you don't aggressively protect your copyright, you lose it, Mm-hmm. Like, Filiberto's. There's a bajillion Bertos out there because Filiberto's did not aggressively protect its name. Yo-Yo. Well, Yo-Yo is actually a different category, but, if you don't aggressively protect your copyright, if you let, like, lookalikes and similar stuff and whatever come along, then you're going to lose it, which is another problem with copyright, right? So there's a video out there. It's almost 45 minutes long, which is why I'm not going to try to summarize it. But it's called YouTube's Copyright System Isn't Broken, The World's Is. It's by Tom Scott. It's really good. It's really informative. If you want to be able to expand your opinion on copyright other than, quote, DMCA bad, which it is. But there's more nuance. So if you're interested in looking into this topic and informing yourself a little bit more, there's a nice 45-minute video explaining why YouTube's copyright system is not broken. It works exactly as a copyright system would be intended to work in a world where our copyright system is terrible. And it is.
I also think Stephen Colbert and or John Oliver has done pieces about copyright material in the past.
I'm sure John Oliver has.
Yes, and I love John Oliver. His takes are typically, or more often than not, very well presented in a way that doesn't I mean, there's bias, as there always is, but you can actually see him actually kind of arguing both sides typically, even if sometimes often in a comedic way to devalue one side. But point still stands. I do think it is always best for anyone who may get riled up about a situation or a topic to just always try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And that specifically, imagine if you yourself were a creator and you created something, and then next thing you know, you see people taking what you've created and starting to make a lot of money off of it with no credit towards you, with no, what's what I'm looking for? Not repentance, not compensation for the work that you've created that they're now just taking and using freely. Now, again, not a simple system, very complex. There are a lot of nuance, but simply imagining that situation happening to you makes it a little bit more understanding of, okay, I can understand why somebody would be very protective. As a matter of fact, look at Nintendo. You cannot tell me Nintendo's tight grasp on their IPs after what happened with the Mario movie. Not the new one coming up with Chris Pratt, but the past movie from, was it the 90s or the 80s?
I don't know, some civilization nightmare dystopia.
Right. After that, and also don't forget about Legend of Zelda. Excuse me, princess.
I mean, at least that wasn't live action.
True. But if you notice, Link never says a word ever since because they were like, no.
I believe his name is Hap.
So yes, it's completely understandable why somebody might take extreme leaps to protect what they've created or what they've owned. But, and as you stated, we'll get to the other nastier side of copyright material later in the show. Actually, oh crap, I just had it and I just lost it. I was going to say something, but I don't remember. That's embarrassing. Anyway,
we'll circle back.
Yeah. Speaking on like good and bad things, let's just kind of dive into a whole cesspool of swampy nastiness.
Let's just stand here on the coastline, look at it, and talk about it a little bit.
That works. So
we're not going all the way in.
Yeah. The gaming industry as a whole has been going through a
Standing
lot.
on the coast, and we are watching the oil pool at our feet.
So Death Stranding levels of but the gaming industry as a whole has had a lot of spotlight placed on it, a lot of, underneath the magnifying glass, rightfully so. And I'm enjoying the good things that are coming from that spotlight, but it's still taking a look at just awfulness and its full definition, right? So first, I want to talk about the PlayStation vice president, at least for the states. The San Diego's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force is looking into a matter regarding the VP of Sony at the United States Sony, or America Sony. I forgot what the proper title for it. But yeah, some dude got caught in a sting operation, not official. It wasn't by law enforcement. It was by content creators, which within itself has problems with people. It's tricky. I am never going to fault potentially, putting the light on someone horrendous and getting their comeuppance and make sure people, get investigated. But at the same time, you do have to question the legitimacy of said quote unquote sting operation when it's often fueled by people looking for internet fame as well as clickbait, but views and monetary value from what they do. Just want to make that as a quick preference because you want to make sure you can confirm what someone is saying. You want to make sure your source is legitimate. So I will say this investigation is currently ongoing for the VP of America Sony in regards to, what is his name? George, what is his name? Blah, blah. George Cacioppo. Apologies if I'm butchering that name. But yeah, it's long story short, they did the whole To Catch a Predator kind of thing, pretend to be someone of a younger age, baiting them, fishing them, and then getting them to show up at a location, and then to confront them with cameras. And it's like, hey, was this you? Blah, 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 blah. You want to talk to us? And of course, when they came to him, he walked away, went to his house, closed the door. But the damage is already done, and we'll see where this investigation goes. But that is just awful. Also, a bit of it made me laugh, even though the topic is a serious topic. Dude got caught on the Sting, or in the Sting, with the video cameras, and he's wearing a PS5 shirt. Yeah, so he is likely going to be pushed out of his position, and
he's already been fired.
There you go. He's fired. So now we will wait to see if investigations go into something further and there are potential criminal allegations or criminal charges pulled up against the man. If they are true and accurate, I say good riddance, rot in hell, and jail is too nice of a place for people like you. Anyways, moving on to other topical situations, we still have the ongoing Activision Blizzard nonsense that surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, is...
I was about to say, are we surprised? No. No, we are not.
Turns out Mr. Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Activision, he became CEO of this company back in 1991, has apparently had information leaked showing that he knew very well the type of actions that were going on at his company, and even allegedly made statements such as if the victim comes forward, he would allegedly in a joking manner, but still said it nevertheless, have that person killed if they spoke out. So, and Andy, I know you mentioned you want to bring up this topic a bit more. Are there any points you want to dive into, either this or the Sony VP guy?
I mean, so the funny thing about the Sony VP guy is that I didn't actually know why he was fired. So the only reason I even knew about this before recording this, of course, is that it showed up in my Google news feed that he had been fired. And I was like, huh, okay. Like, it was just in the headline, Sony VP fired, removed from position. And I was like, okay. I mean, but I'm not invested in that. I'm not going to read that article, And then today we, sit down for the show and I'm just like, all the pieces are coming together. So that's how that knowledge got diffused. And then regarding Bobby, honestly, the only thing that I'm surprised about this development, because, gaming being a boys' club and people being sexist is not really news, not particularly surprising, always disappointing, but I'm not like, in my video games, clutching my pearl so hard I'm going to shatter them in my hand. But what did surprise me was the board of directors turning around and backing him up. This strikes me as unwise business.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of garbage happens as a result of business. And that was a joke from me. And this is a move that I just don't understand. You can get rid of this man and you can replace him. He's a dude. You can do that. There's lots of people in this country, and I'm sure that there are people that could do Bobby's job better than he could. In fact, I guarantee it based on recent performance reviews. But for some reason, they are backing him up, and it's just causing such a level of fallout inside the company. People are walking out, people are quitting. You're hemorrhaging all of the talent out of your company. And I believe we talked about it last time where we were like, oh, well, some people, they have to make the decision, whether they stay there and work or, whether they leave, but then they don't have any income. It seems more and more like that decision is coming down to vacate the premises.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm and it. I'm just glad, because I don't think, as society opens up more and more to who is allowed to, and I'm not going to get too philosophical about this, but, who is allowed to participate openly in society, as that number count keeps going up, then the people who have been basically, I don't want to say oppressing, because I don't think that's quite the right word. So I'll just use the phrase that I prefer. The people who have been being dicks to people who haven't been allowed previously to be outspoken, now that those people are being outspoken and the dickishness is coming to light, I'm glad that people are responding in a way that I would hope an open and inclusive society would respond. So it's definitely a painful transition, and there's still plenty more to go. But I think Bobby's gonna get it. Like it's coming, Bobby, and it's gonna get him. And I'm just waiting for that pin to pin meet bowling ball is basically the situation that we're looking at here. And I kind of wonder what is going to be the fate of Activision Blizzard after this, because personally, I can't help it. I really just hope the company dies. And I do feel kind of bad for saying that, just because it's mostly a position born out of spite for a company that has been given a lot, and it feels like they like, at first they cared, and it feels like the apathy has just been kind of growing and growing. Not even it, and it really is apathy. It's not like disdain or like haughtiness that's going to, maybe a little bit of haughtiness, but not like a ton, that's gonna, that's taking the company down. It's just whatever, like the company just doesn't feel like it cares about anything short of just what's on the bottom line. Which again makes me really curious why Bobby is still there. What are you doing? Because that's only hurting the bottom line. I do not understand. But that's, everybody's making their own decisions, and as long as the decision is being made to, back up this rather reprehensible individual, then they're gonna deal with the fallout of that. And that's just how it is right now. The man gets none of my sympathies. The company gets none of my sympathies. I hope that talent goes elsewhere, and they've clearly demonstrated that they're capable of making good stuff and supporting good stuff when they want to. And I think that the individuals are greater than the sum of the company. So I wish everybody who is getting out of there the best of luck in their future endeavors.
Absolutely. And well said, man. Like, well said in every basis. I know a lot of people, and again, not to try to teeter on the edges of politics and philosophies, but I typically hear a lot of people will say, well, we live in America. We can make decisions, we can make choices, and etc. And I think quite literally, as you mentioned, like, well, everyone's making decisions, everyone's making choices. And we're seeing the ripple effects and the outcome of said choices, with their entire staff essentially leaving and finding opportunities elsewhere, or just saying, F you, I'm out. And that is a reaction to their decisions. And you will see people who complain and say, okay, well, you should suck it up, or blah, blah, blah. No. And again, let's get into that area of politics, especially in today's environment with the pandemic going on. And you have a lot of people saying people don't want to work. But the response to that is, no, we want to work, but we won't be treated like slaves or garbage or trash or put up with nonsense. This is essentially that, in my opinion, fully on display. You messed up, information got out, people went, okay, we can try to fix it. When the option to fix it is get rid of your horrific, terrible, corrupt CEO, and then your CEO stays and the board beneath him goes, we'll back him up, then the game is lost. That is no incentive for anyone to stay and continue putting up with the abuse and the corruptness that goes from the top and trickles on down. You want to talk about the trickle-down effect? This is that. What's trickling down is a cesspool of nastiness that is just unbearable for people to continue to deal with. All right? It is what it is. And honestly, as you mentioned earlier, like, it's hurting their bottom line, and you can't fathom how a board of directors can make this decision, make this choice. I'm there with you. It would be one thing if these allegations were still just allegations without any form of evidence, and they were just hearsay for the moment. But we have concrete evidence. We have actual claims. We have proof. We have documents. The freaking state of California is looking into it legally, and a state is trying to sue a company. You know how bad things have to get for a state, the state local government suing a freaking company. And they have all that means they have the evidence to say, oh, well, this is actually reasonable. This is something that we can potentially win, because we're not going to waste our time with something that isn't provable. Yet you would have every single member, or at least majority of the board, go, let's continue to support this corrupting official person. Why? Potentially because of pockets, potentially because of connections, potentially because the people on the board are just as guilty as he is. I don't know. I can't prove that. I don't know the board people on the members of the board, but there's no other route of rationality that I can come to as a conclusion as to why they would make that decision. None. Because companies are typically all about money, right? They're not about integrity, because if it's about integrity, then definitely they would have kicked them out by now. So it's about money. But even with the money, you know, if you want to see what a typical response would be, look at Papa John's. You know, CEO Papa John himself made a few statements, a few words were used, got him outed by the company, right? So I kind of feel bad now. I feel like I've taken what you've stated in a very well very well organized, polite polite speech, and I've injected a lot of anger and a lot of disdain into it. My apologies.
Politeness breaks down the more outrageous the situation is.
Ain't that the truth? Ugh.
And this situation is truly, truly outrageous.
Oh, I'm sorry. It makes no. Like you stated,
basically, what we're trying to say is, if you work on the board of directors at Blizzard, please come on the show. We'd love to have an interview with you.
Actually, yes. Yeah, I won't say much. We'll just listen, and we'll let you dig your own grave deeper. Anyway.
Or maybe you have a really good explanation. I don't know. Blow my mind. Can you? No. What? You never know.
Oh, that's sad, man. That's There was something else that I wanted to mention, but again, I've forgotten it due to just the sheer audacity of the situation.
It's okay. We've already beaten the crap out of this photocopier.
That is very true. Okay, so moving on. As you probably saw for the viewers of the podcast, this session is being recorded on December 9th. And December 9th, the Game Awards has been going on. And it's still going on as we record this session. Apologies if, you want us to talk about it, cover it a little bit more, but no. So I will say, from what I've seen during their pre-show, some nice things, coming down the pipeline. Some of the games that look the most interesting to me were Have a Nice Death, but I'm super biased. I love anything with the actual personification of death as a being, as an actual individual. But it looks so cool. The animation looks sweet. The 60 frames per second motions of like, I'm pretty sure it's hand drawn. Side scrolling looks like it's a roguelike. Just classic, just beautiful. Evil West looked interesting. It looks very wacky, like it's not taking itself seriously in terms of tone, direction. But the art style, the art direction looks very gritty, very dark, very gothic-like. So it's going to be playing with that sense of duality. The game looks dark, serious, and brooding, but the dialogue, the character himself looks like a Wild Wild West cowboy with anime-esque levels of gear like Devil May Cry in this deep, dark world. So looks interesting. They're making a Texas Chainsaw Massacre multiplayer game, which I don't know how I feel about that. I honestly feel like you can just add the guy into something by was it Dead by Daylight? Or
I was about to say, don't we already have Dead by Daylight?
Yeah. So I'm not interested, but I'm curious as to why and how well this game is going to do. And if I had to make my prediction, I don't think it's going to do that well. Expanse, the TV show, is apparently getting a game. A very slight teaser. I have no idea if it's going to be like an RPG, a type of visual novel. I have no clue, but we'll see. Monster Hunter Rise is coming to PC. That's already been known though, but they announced that they're coming up with a new DLC called Sunbreak, where they enter a new island. I think it's like the Isle of El Gato or El something, El Gato with a D instead of a T or something along those lines. It looks interesting. It's Monster Hunter. I'm gonna play it. I love Monster Hunter. They've yet to do anything wrong with the franchise except for the movie. So Persona 4 has Arena Ultimax, the same battle game, just coming up with like some extra stuff added to it, which is fine. It's whatever. And then one that looks very interesting, Planet of Lana, Off Planet Odyssey. To me, it seems like they just want to take Force Awakens, Rey, who's on that desert planet, just scrounging for technology and things, and just turn an entire game based off of that simple premise alone. It looks very inspired by Star Wars. The character herself looks a hell of a lot like Rey, but that's not a knock. It caught my interest. I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. During the main show, from what I could,
it reminded me of Inside a little bit.
Yeah.
Not it doesn't have the same like theme or anything, but just little person traveling back and forth in little 2D world.
Did you catch the studio behind it?
No.
Okay, because you actually made me think, like, I wonder if it is that same studio now. Probably not, but Anyway, the main show, from what I could see before we started our session tonight, you got a lot coming down the pipeline that looks really good. Ninja Theory has Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga coming out. Looks phenomenal. The giant thing that they shot, it just looks good. Hopefully they learn.
They're not the same developer. Different studios.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm. Different studios.
Oh. I don't know how I feel about that, man. At the same time, like, I was going to say I hope they learn about the mechanics from the first game, because the first game was phenomenal in my opinion, but it fell short due to repetitiveness, and the game mechanics started to grow tiresome and stagnant halfway towards the end of the game. But if it's Ninja Theory and they weren't the ones who worked on the original, I think they can definitely take it home. But at the same time, it feels like they just kind of snatched away the baby of another team. I don't know.
We'll see exactly how close they are. There's only so much you can glean from 2 minutes, right?
Yeah. And yeah. So gotta put a flag on the screen or a flag in the podcast, right? Anytime you have a game show
on the podcast, offsides, 5-yard penalty.
Yeah.
Repeat first down.
Yeah. Anytime you have a game show or presentation, anything that is trying to show off a game before it's released, take everything with a grain of salt. Everything. Don't trust diddly squat. Okay? Do not pre-order anything. Just take your wallet, put it in a safe, hide it from Gabe Newell. All right. Just wait until the game releases. Wait a week. See everybody's reaction. Then decide on whether or not you want to buy the game. Just look. We the last 2 years we should have learned by now that you cannot trust any early preview, any early showcase. You can't trust anything. Okay, the game looks great. It may be completely different by the time the game releases. So just keep that in mind. Please keep that in mind. Please keep that in mind. Ugh. Anyway, we have a new studio, or a different studio, working on a Star Wars game now, which is a freaking breath of fresh air. So Quantic Dreams is working on Star Wars Eclipse. It is going to take place in the High Republic era. And so far, we've only have a teaser, and they state that the game is in very early development. So let's just leave them alone. Let's let them develop. Let's not put any pressure. Let's not ask them to release the game early. If they have to delay the game, let them delay it. Publishers, investors, shut the hell up. Just let them work and just let the game speak for itself when they are ready to release. Please.
I like how that sort of monologue is the thing that specifically I'm not trying to like make mockery of this or anything, but it's the sort of monologue that Star Wars stirs because we have seen very vividly the like drastic differences in results between Star Wars that is rushed and Star Wars that comes out patiently. Like the shift in quality is so stunning that like that this IP is capable of making great stuff. But you gotta let it cook in the oven for enough time or you're gonna eat raw chicken, right? So
you don't want that video game salmonella. You don't.
You do not want video game salmonella. And even less space salmonella. That kind's the worst.
Oh. Speaking of salmonella, Amazon is coming out with the new games. I'm sorry. I'm a bit biased against Amazon. Just saying. They're coming out with a new game called Ark, which is not related to New World, an MMO game that I believe released and had mixed reactions. But, look, if Amazon can make good games, cool, but I will never trust Amazon with anything. I still use Amazon for shopping and shipping and everything, but at the same time, I feel bad when I do because I know they're just taking my data. I know they're undercutting other stores, other businesses, other creators. And the same thing is if they can make it deeply into the gaming sphere, they'll do the same thing there. You're going to see them trying to buy up small indie studios and gamify their video games. Hilarious. Make things into cash grabs. Just don't believe me? Time will prove me right. I am pretty certain on that aspect. But not excited to see Amazon get deeper into the gaming sphere, but it is what it is. They're here. We should get used to it. On a brighter note, Warner Brother had announced a Wonder Woman game, which is actually had me very excited because I know there's been a lot of rumors about a Superman game, and we don't know the state that it's in, if it's going to still actually be a thing. It's whatever.
Superman 64.
Fun fact, I actually enjoyed that game. I do. Aside from the rings, everything else I was actually into. Granted, I was a dumb kid when I played it, so, I didn't have actual taste back then, but I digress. It is just good to see another Warner Brothers superhero game that isn't a Batman Arkham related game. Nothing against Batman Arkham, but I'm glad they're finally taking the chance in something else besides Batman.
I hope it's good.
Same.
Not because I'm going to play it, because I'm not, because it's going to come out on, Xbox and PlayStation 5. I don't own those consoles, but I still just hope that it's good because I like the movie. So,
yeah. I actually haven't seen the second one.
I haven't seen the second one either, but the first one, it was good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know. I'll save some thoughts about. I'll save it for a future video, potentially with Ishtiak, who's the movie buff that we talked about with Snyderverse. But maybe I don't want to taint the news about the Wonder Woman game though. Also, we're gonna.
Look, there was a little too much mustache, but it was still good.
I can do this with my hands. I kind of want Nigel Thornberry as a villain now, like straight up. Anyway, Remedy is coming out with an Alan Wake 2, which I believe is going to have a lot of communities super hyped about it. Not only did we get the remaster of Alan Wake 1 with the copyright fixes, which hilarious enough, copyright issues plagued the first game. We're getting a sequel. So you got a remaster at a discounted price and a sequel coming up. That's phenomenal. It's good news. And at the Game Awards show, we also got the premiere of the Sonic 2 movie, which I get it. Sonic is a game franchise, even though it's getting a movie, so they wanted to showcase it at the Game Awards. But I will say this: I was not expecting the trailer to be as good as it seemed to me. Great, I should rewatch it, kind of let it simmer. But Idris Elba's voice for Knuckles was actually good. I'm sold. The voice actor / actress, I'm not sure if it's a male or female, but not that it matters. For Tails, perfect. It's the perfect Tails voice. I love it. And Ben Schwartz is still owning it as Sonic, as well as Jim Carrey, his reprisal as Dr. Eggman, or Dr. Robotnik, whichever one you prefer, the U.S. or the Japanese naming. It's still killing it for me. Like he has this more iconic look now. He's not chubby, and I wonder if by the end of this movie, if there's going to be a gag about him like stress eating, and if Sonic 3 we're going to get him being the more round Eggman. I'm speculating. Let me reel it back in.
The first movie didn't like blow my socks off or anything. Like it was, what you would expect out of a kid's video game movie. But it was what I wanted anyways, so I enjoyed it, and I'm going to see this one too. So
let this be a lesson to all movie creators. I appreciate personally if a creator wants to go like try to make this deep, methodical, message to this masterpiece, very artful. That's fine. That's totally fine. It is equally as fine to make a movie be what it is, what it set out to be, and be very simplistic, be very pure, and just be what it is. The Sonic 1 movie is exactly that. It is what you expect. It is nothing super special, but at the same time, because it knows, and I'm assuming that's after the quote unquote redesign, which I'm actually starting to believe a bit more of the merit that was planned as a way to create market hype, lower expectations, and then knock it out of the park. But let's not put on tinfoil hats.
Unless I see any actual like emails or anything like that, that just feels like internet hearsay.
I agree. But I will still say I am starting to feel more leaning towards that thought. And there's other reasons why, but again, this is not a podcast about the inner workings of the making of the Sonic movie.
Yes, the deep state Sonic conspiracies.
Right. I would just say if they really had to redesign that character that much in every scenes for like a movie that's over an hour, they did it really quickly, and the outcome was much better than I expected. Anyway, just make a movie be what it is. And oftentimes you can stand on those merits of just being what you want that movie to be. You do not need to be something special. You do not need to be the next Forrest Gump. You don't need to be the next taxi driver? Taxi?
Crazy Taxi?
Is that the one by the famous director Scorsese?
I have no idea.
Hold on.
No, jeez.
Scorsese. Taxi Driver, yeah. Sorry, Taxi Driver is a phenomenal. I still say it's one of the best movies ever made. Not just because it's Martin Scorsese. While I have my favorite directors, I am not inclined to say that everything of a favorite director is gold, but Taxi Driver had a special, like, just energy about it that was just phenomenal. Same way that I feel about Forrest Gump and even The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. All movies I highly recommend. But again, this is not a movie podcast, so I'll just keep it going. Anyway, just make your movie to be what it is in its purest form, and oftentimes you can see people will receive it. I'm gonna skip over a lot of the other stuff. Some other games were showcased. Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, the sequel to the part 1 of the remake, is coming out next year. A game called Slitterhead, which is, it looks weird, but it looks good. If I had to give it like a summary of what it looks like to me, I would say it looks like Devil May Cry meets the anime/manga Parasite. Then there's Nightingale, which I have both eyes on because it was described in a cool way. One, I love survival, build your base, kill monsters, gather resources, survive, etc. But this is about, story-wise, humanity basically either finding or creating these gates and portals that go into an infinite amount of different worlds. And then while humanity was traveling through these different portals, the portals just suddenly stopped. And they don't know why, and many of them are stranded in these different worlds, and the one that we were showcased with is essentially the world of the Fae, so I'm assuming like fairies and fantastical creatures, and they showed like this giant monsters and this woman in a Victorian dress. It just looks good. But again, is what was showcased specifically for a game show, so we'll wait to see more. You have any other thoughts and opinions about the Game Awards show before we move on to the main topic?
Just one more game that I wanted to mention because we glossed it. Hellblade 2. Hellblade was awesome. A really good analogy for mental illness. Had a really cool mechanic where you had like this corruption creeping on you, and every time you died, the corruption would spread a little bit, and if you died too many times, the game would delete your save file. Really, really cool concept. My issue with the game, and it was kind of a big one, was that it was really dark. Made it really hard to tell what was going on. So that was a little prohibitive for me. But I'm excited for the sequel. I'm very curious what themes are going to carry over, but also how they're going to change it up. So it is... I don't know if it's going to be good, but I feel very confident calling it already. It's going to be interesting.
Agreed. And I do want to preference that, or I guess... post-its or after the fact. I had the same type of dialogue with Lewis last episode. Anyway, I know a lot of people are very sensitive to the topic about mental illness and how it's portrayed in different mediums, and that's completely understandable and rational. But at the same time, I think when you have mediums such as games, movies, comics, stories, books that touch on mental illness and other forms of mental topics, it is a great way to bring this more to the forefront and put this into people's minds as a thing to think about and consider in a world where essentially in past generations, people would typically try to hide anything related to mental illness. They would try to dismiss anything of mental illness. A lot of times people would correlate certain negative behaviors to just being a bad person, and rather than their mental illness. And that's not to dismiss someone's actions just because of their illness, but just in general. So if you are personally someone who has negative opinions about mental illness being displayed in different works of arts, by all means, voice your opinions. I hope you do it in a way that is more concise, positive, and respectful. But at the same time, understand that not everyone's going to share the same view as you. And while you have complete and total validity in your opinions and your thoughts and your views, those views do not speak for everybody. And personally, I think having the topic of mental illness be brought forth to be a bigger discussion point does more good than harm. Granted, it doesn't make it perfect. I want to make that sure I make that clear. I understand that, but at the same time, I am on the train of people talking more about mental illness and recognizing it more often than not.
So as a general sweeping statement, I think that any topic that isn't specifically based around hate or a hateful ideology is worth exploring through the medium of video games.
And actually, a tangent on that, I will say I also think the importance of equally, if it does cover something that is negative, depending on how it goes about it. For instance, I like when a medium can take a very negative topic, a very negative viewpoint, a very negative movement, and then through their work portray it and display why it's negative and potentially why it's not something that should be tolerated or backed or supported by ways of showing you through a fantastical, fictional story, plot, world, whatever, as to why it's bad. And I say this, and again, not to get too political or into like topics nowadays, but so much going on in the world. Simply put, it's very weird that I have to watch people complain about quote unquote critical race theory and try to hide it, and then try to say like any discussion about it is, should be banned from schools or etc. With textbooks pushing forward, trying to turn rewrite history in terms of slavery as these people are workers who like. No, it's okay to sometimes grab a negative aspect, put a spotlight on it as to why it was bad, and not try to downplay the history that it has. But it's oftentimes harder to, in my opinion, do that correctly. So just one put that little bit of nuance out there. Anyway, speaking about nuance and, and good and bad, back on the gaming industry, it seems like so much has occurred with game developers and game studios that a lot of people. Oh, I'll just say this: 5 to 10 years ago, people would say that the gaming industry is about to have the bubble burst, and it kind of feels like we're reaching maybe not in the exact sense of the definition, but yeah, the gaming industry is on a very unsteady boat right now. So, Andy, have you seen the Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Definitive Edition?
I'm gonna stop you right there, Zane.
Shoot.
Haven't we had this conversation?
Maybe.
I think we might have. Last season. I think there might have been a moment where we were talking about how it feels like there's a gaming bubble, and because companies are like making unwise decisions or putting out low quality product, and it looks like it, the House of Cards is, starting to get in the middle of a storm. I doubt highly we use that exact analogy, but and I'm just gonna start by saying the exact same thing that I said back then, which is you can't have the game. There is no situation, there is no scenario, there is no timeline in the immediate future, or even within the next couple of years, I'd be willing to wager, where the gaming industry implodes. And the reason I say that so confidently is because even if, like, and I'm just going to touch on, like, even if, like, some big name, game developers go down, even, like, if EA goes down, or, well, first of all, that'd be good. But if EA goes down, or if Rockstar goes down, if, Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo all just imploded tomorrow, that'd be unfortunate. And I'd be sad for at least one of those things. But you can't kill the gaming industry, because the gaming scene, the gaming culture has adopted indie games to be mainstream. not that indie games themselves are mainstream, that's why they're indie, but the idea of the indie game is in a lot of people's, it's in like the cultural consciousness, and it's in any given gamer's, like a lot of, I would say that I would actually be willing to wager that the majority of gamers, even if they do not partake of the indie game, are aware of the indie gaming scene. You know, there are small but prominent groups of individuals who are capable and proven even to be able to produce high quality gaming content. You know, I'm not expecting FIFA out of these people, but you know, you look at, you know, Concerned Ape or Chucklefish or whoever the heck made Among Us, you know, like Among Us, that's not a mainstream game. That's not a AAA title.
Fast before,
but it makes AAA content, you know? So I don't think that you can burst the gaming bubble because I think there's too much investment from differing parties that make up what gaming is to the point where you couldn't kill the whole thing all at once at this point. You know, it is far past the original bubble burst, you know, and not only that, but even if like you need to understand something. There was a landfill of ET games. This is an actual thing that happened where there were so many trash quality games that they literally filled a landfill with just one of them. Just one of them. And again, and you know what? I'm even going to touch back on copyright. This is when console gaming, like, it didn't protect itself. Anybody could make a game for anything. You can't just make a game for Nintendo. I mean, you can, but you'll never distribute it, right? Like, and you know, gaming companies, we used to have Xbox Arcade. I think that's dead now. But, you know, there's gaming companies are way more stringent about like who publishes what and where. And I mean, like, yeah, you can just be like, oh, well, you know, just go into the first point here. Oh, Grand Theft Auto trilogy. It looks, you know, it's kind of crappy. You know, it's not particularly impressive. It's basically the same game. Let me tell you about a game called Skyrim. Okay? Right? Mm-hmm. It's the same game, right? It might just be like a slightly prettier, or, you know, there's little tweaks here, little tweaks there, but it's Skyrim. You know, let me tell you about Minecraft, right? Minecraft has been in the public, and Minecraft has, like, there's never been like an expansion, quote unquote, for Minecraft. You know, there's been like content upgrades and, you know, stuff like that, but there's never been like Minecraft 2 or like Minecraft the Super Nether, right? Like, none of that stuff. It's just Minecraft. But when you make something that's good and people want to be able to play it, you know, on the newest hardware, or they just want to keep playing it because it's that freaking good, then you can release it to them in these altered states and people will still pick it up. So anytime anybody says gaming bubble, they almost certainly aren't talking about the gaming industry imploding. Because people who talk about gaming bubbles now, for the most part, possibly even for the vast majority, don't know what a gaming bubble looks like because they've never seen the gaming industry implode, right? Like, the gaming industry imploded just before I was born. Mm-hmm. So even I don't know, but I understand what it means when imagine this. You live in the 80s. You own every major console that exists, right? You've got an Atari. You've got things that aren't Atari and therefore aren't memorable at all. But you've got, you know, you've got like these 3 or 4 gaming systems, and simultaneously they all stop publishing because all of the games that have been released, the public is so inundated with unregulated, unfiltered shovelware, literal shovelware, stuff that got shoveled into landfills because it was so unplayable. Right? all of your systems become worth nothing. At least until 40 years pass, then they'll be worth money again. That is a gaming bubble burst. That is the industry dying on the spot, right? Dying over a course of months. And if it weren't for Nintendo, I mean, I'm sure we would still have a gaming scene. I'm sure it would have revitalized eventually. But if it weren't for the Nintendo Entertainment System, that space would have just not existed for I don't know how long. And I'm not going to postulate. I don't know the history exceptionally well in case my example of Atari and other things. But, you know, there were multiple major gaming systems at the time. There was competition and stuff like that going on for the space. But that is what a gaming bubble bursting looks like, because that was a bubble, and when it burst, the whole thing imploded. So
let me ask you then, what would you call it if all of the major players, the biggest companies that have the biggest stocks, the biggest values on Wall Street, the biggest creators in the gaming industry all went belly up, and all you had left was industry makers until either the previous studios got back on its feet or the smaller studios rose to replace them? What would you call that type of situation?
So I will immediately cave. I'll give you that. If Nintendo, Xbox, and Sony all just died off the face of the earth, like, instantly, I would just be like, okay, that's a gaming bubble burst. That requires, like, Xbox, like, mantra and Nintendo mantra to line up, right? Like, in a situation... And Nintendo is... Like, you ever notice how Nintendo aggressively kills everything that vaguely has their name on it, but isn't theirs? You ever notice that? Like, you ever notice how, like, Melee tournaments die? You ever notice how, like, any sort of Pokemon spinoff that looks really good and really high quality and really cool just perishes instantly? Like, it gets released, and then it just, like, dies in the maternity ward? Mm-hmm. That's because Nintendo's walking around with a freaking shotgun and killing everything that looks vaguely like them. And Nintendo has a good reason to do this, because Nintendo was the phoenix that arose from the freaking ashes of the first bubble burst. If the bubble was on fire and highly incendiary. So, and Nintendo's the only company that's experienced that. Sony didn't experience that. Sony was watching with their, like, subwoofers, and they were like, wow, that looks bad over there. And I don't even know if Microsoft had existed. So, like... You're talking about a world in which Nintendo basically not only either stops caring about that, or does it so aggressively that they somehow blow their own leg off with said copyright shotgun, right? And that's never going to line up with, say, Sony, who has a share button built into the freaking controller. So right? This is not the same sort of, like, feeling Nintendo does not have this feeling of invulnerability that, say, and I'm just going to really stretch here, that, say, Amazon has, because Bezos can do whatever he wants whenever he wants for any reason. Mm-hmm. You know? And as long as you have these companies that don't see eye to eye on, like, gaming philosophy, then you'll be hard pressed to be in a situation where they all perish, right? So, that would require some sort of, like, societal level shift, where at some point somebody was like, yes, video games do cause violence, and then everybody just agrees to that and the industry shuts down.
So let me rephrase then. Maybe bubble burst is the wrong terminology, or the wrong term, or the wrong phrase.
Bubble burst is definitely the wrong terminology. But I wanted to address that, because whenever anybody's just like, the bubble's bursting, what do you think, like, we're going to get a little philosophical here again. What do you think that means? What does that language mean when you say the gaming bubble is bursting? Because if you mean, because I know you're about to tell me, right? You're about to tell me that it means something other than what I've just described to you, just so, you know, for the sake of argument, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the language used if language is how we're communicating with each other, then what anybody is communicating, not you specifically, Zane. I'm not like, how dare you, sir? But I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying what the language of the gaming bubble bursting means in the context of the gaming industry. We already know what that means. It means the gaming industry freaking dies, literally dies. Something that I've never seen, you've never seen, and probably nobody who listens to this podcast has ever seen, because anybody who was actually alive when the gaming industry died was either too young or probably didn't care, right? Because the people that don't fit into those categories are probably not listening to this podcast. Maybe they should. But when you say the gaming bubble has died, what you're talking about is, to anybody with historical context, is watching every single major platform perish within months of each other.
Okay, so not to dismiss any of what you went off on.
I understand you're not dismissing me. I just want to make it clear that, because that language, whether you mean it or whether you're putting your foot in your mouth, that language means, is the gaming industry on the verge of collapse? Is it about to perish? Well, is it about to be wiped, just scoured from the earth? And the answer is always no.
So at that point, I would argue more from an economical standpoint within like economics, the idea of a bubble being the definition of the rapid and unrealistic inflation of asset prices without any basis in the intrinsic value of the given asset.
I mean, if you want to ask, is the slow dissolution of quality in the gaming industry about to finally have repercussions? I understand that's wordier than gaming bubble, but it at least addresses what you're trying to tell me.
Well, but see, like the only contrast or the conflict that I have there is, while the term gaming bubble might have a different correlation in the past with the events, like you stated, before we were born, other economic areas, quote unquote, bubbles don't share that, total collapse or total death of the industry type of umbrella imagery. Is this simply when things get too chaotic and then the values plummet and then they slowly climb back, if they can climb back. And so
that's fair, but I also think that most industries haven't had, at least in recent history, we're not talking about like the ancient era. We're talking about like 40 years ago, right?
Yeah. So,
like, sure, there's been like a housing bubble, but there's always, like, houses have been around forever, and there's always going to be more houses, Yeah. It's not like the construction industry just like died off and nobody built anything anymore.
But again, I think that's the point.
I understand that in general, when you talk about a bubble, you're talking about something outside. I guess that it's because I guess the reason why I get up in arms about it is because the gaming industry has had a bubble experience that's highly unlike any other bubble that I can think of, at least off the top of my head, giving it 5 seconds of thought. Any other bubble that's ever affected any other kind of market, whether it was a gold bubble or a housing bubble or whatever, like those industries didn't perish. Those things didn't stop existing for a period of time. And I guess, and I again, based off my very limited memory of the situation, gaming is kind of unique in that aspect, in that it was once, very prominent, and then it was just like deleted from the cultural zeitgeist. And like I said, I just can't think of anything like it. So the gaming bubble, to me and anybody who's aware of, the literal gaming bubble and then demise of the gaming industry in the 80s, it means something different, I guess. And it's funny, I'm arguing about language, and now I'm just like, well, for us, it's different. Shooting myself in the foot here, but like you can at least understand where I'm coming from when we're talking about this. Like, I'll see the point. Like, we can talk about the game, like this gaming bubble thing. I just want to, make it clear, when you're talking about a gaming bubble, you're gonna give some people, flashbacks to, oh, Jesus Christ, it's ET all over again. And yeah, I don't know. I guess that's my point.
Valid points.
We can call it a gaming bubble.
Well,
I'm okay now.
I mean, overall, it is important to distinguish because, so like you stated, there are times where terminology has a more of a cultural, societal meaning than what it may be by definition, and that's fine. You know, language is a living thing, yeah, or at least English is a living language, and therefore terms and definitions are subject to change over time depending on the generations at hand. Fun fact, another tangent. I believe somebody was pointing out that the African American vernacular, you know, AAV, is apparently, people who have been studying it show signs that it has certain levels of superiority to the concept of language. In that case, I'm going to say this because it's often used in like the old jokes where it's like, oh, women be shopping. Not to give any credence to traditional gender norms and all that whatnot, but point still stands. Someone who was doing a study showed that if you ask someone who is shopping, who's shopping, and who be shopping, certain people, typically that of the African American group, could tell the difference. Whereas if someone says, "Oh, they be shopping," means that they are they participate in the activity of shopping either in the past or something that they normally do. Whereas it's different than someone is shopping, you know, someone who was actively doing it. So I just wanted to make that point about like the idea of a living language. I found that kind of cool, but I digress. To the initial point that I was trying to make, though,
and to the initial point, that's why. If your question to me is the gaming bubble finally bursting? My default answer is no. For the past 20 minutes worth of explanation.
Okay. So for viewers and listeners, to give an idea of where I'm about to go with this, for normal economic businesses in terms of like stock values, pricing values, asset values, typically in the economical bubble terminology, you have the blowing of bubbles, which investors typically pour a lot of money in over the course of a few years to a lot of years. The point is that they're investing a lot because they believe that this industry is going to bloom into something very profitable. During that time, the price can have positive feedbacks, but then if abused, you can start seeing people, you know, getting angry, no longer putting their trust in said industry, and therefore the value starts to decline at a rapid rate, in which case you see a lot of people selling stuff off, trying to get out and avoid losing money. And when that happens, if you have enough people pulling out of the biggest actors in an industry, you have the quote-unquote crash, which isn't the complete dissolving of an industry, but rather basically a lot of money has left that industry for the time being, which is kind of cyclical. If you know, the whole thing about supply and demand is a pattern. There's waves, ups and downs, and etc. The idea of a bubble bursting is a very fast and sharp spike way down before a potential recovery. And so when I say this, and I mention it with the gaming industry, the idea behind it is essentially, we see games as a service becoming far more popular. We see gaming studios and industry developers trying to save money by utilizing the same assets and models and everything. And that's totally fine, by the way. But when they start doing things like, oh, this game will include NFTs. Oh, there's a gacha system. Oh, pay to win. Oh, all these things are just saying, give me more money, more money, more money, more money, more money, more money, to the point where we're seeing an increase. And it's not anything significant yet, in my opinion, at least, but you're seeing people become far more outspoken with, hey, if you keep adding this kind of crap to a game, we're going to stop playing. And we've seen that with the decline of things such as Square Enix's Marvel's Avengers video game, which is also getting some backlash right now, that being the DLC for Spider-Man, that when they gave the teaser for it, mind you, the animation was so bad. Spider-Man looked so stiff. He looked so slow. He was defying physics by like, it was very weird. But that's whatever. It's a cutscene trailer to hype up this DLC. The DLC comes with no story mission. It's just giving you the character Spider-Man to play with. And while that's fine, people were expecting more. And so you also had Marvel's Avengers go back on the word about not having any pay to win features such as like, oh, EXP boost that you can buy, drop loot increase that you can buy, etc. They said they would never do that. Well, they did it, and then they got called out about it. And so again, the player base dropped significantly. You're seeing these practices become normalized by all the big players. EA, Activision, Uplay, Ubisoft, which is Uplay technically. Even certain indie developers are trying to kind of slowly put some of the mechanics in just to try to get some extra income, which is understandable. But if it's becoming a practice that most people do not like, they are vehemently against, and while currently, like you stated, people will still buy junk because nostalgia or because they like it or because it's a popular thing that they know, even things like Pokemon. You had the Pokemon Company and Game Freak come out and literally say, like, hey, we have seen that the amount of complaints and people saying that some of the choices for the games has been unacceptable has significantly and exponentially increased within the last 2 years. And so if you see this as being the direction for the market to go forward, and even other things, we can talk about technology and things like removing headphone jacks and etc. If that's the go forward and people are not liking it to the point where we may see a turnaround, and if you just get one or two companies that do the things that everyone wants, and you see everybody pulling out of the biggest players in an industry, that can cause a massive wave of influx in terms of the stock values, the assets, the pricing, and etc. I don't think that's going to actually happen. So to even answer my own question to like the show notes about, is the gaming bubble finally bursting? Even in my sense of like the terminology, no, because we've not yet reached that point that shows a massive decline in value. But we are seeing it increasing and kind of heading towards that direction with players like CD Projekt Red. Their stock values plummeted after the whole Cyberpunk debacle. Rockstar, their value plummeting. Roblox actually came out and made a public or went public with their company, and it boomed in like the first 2 weeks and then started plummeting in terms of the value. And the concept of just the status of the gaming industry, I do think is worth noting that some of the biggest actors are no longer in the good graces to the public and the consumers. Whether or not they still buy is a completely different story, but we've said it multiple times. You vote with your money. If you don't like something, don't support
That's exactly what I was about to say. Vote with your wallet.
Yeah. But to also kind of showcase to the viewers of the podcast, at least, why people are upset at some of these biggest companies. For the Rockstar aspect of it, they released the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition, which packages GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. And people are, it's not good. Essentially, a lot of the modding community, the hacker communities, they went in and did a deep dive. They what is the code or the term when they dive into the source code? Data mining. They data mined and found out that at least for Vice City, San Andreas, GTA 3 had the most significant work done to it, but for at least Vice City and San Andreas, they just took the mobile game version of those, the GTA San Andreas and Vice City on like Android and iOS, and they used AI computations to do upscaling. So they didn't always create new models. They didn't actually touch things up by hand. They kind of threw it into a let's make things look better as quick as possible through automation. And look, I'm a cloud automation engineer. I love automation, but there is a time and place when to use automation.
I'm actually very curious how that's going to work out, because if it works out well, that's got implications when it comes to future remakes.
Actually, yeah, if your AI upscaling can be good enough, cool. But you can look at the side by sides and know that this should not have been released in the state that it released in.
I mean, again, I'm just going to turn back to Skyrim. Why are you buying this new edition?
Okay.
And the answer is probably because you want to play it like either on a new platform or you want to play the newest version, and those are completely valid reasons for buying the game, right?
Yes.
As long as the game's not broken, people are playing it because they enjoy, or people are going to buy it because they enjoyed the original play experience and they want to have it again.
Yeah.
And they want to have it on a fresh system. And that's totally fine. And I don't think that's inherently poisonous to the industry the way certain other practices are. You know, you're putting out a game that people want to play because they enjoyed it. That's fine.
But,
and hopefully it doesn't suck, right? Like that's the actual concern. Is it going to be like is it going to be a mess?
Right. And it was. And that's actually the biggest, at least for the Rockstar issue with the GTA trilogy. It sucked. It's objectively worse than the original, and we've seen that modders did more to give the game more life in its previous iterations. So if they want to release a new version of the game for newer consoles with tweaks and things, like you said, that's fine. It's understandable. And as someone who bought Skyrim multiple times, I'm guilty of that, and I think it's totally fine. But if they release Skyrim on a new console, and the game was ran through like AI automation to quote unquote make it better,
right? If it got jacked up, then it would be bad, and then you would either get a refund or discourage people from getting it, and then they wouldn't keep putting it out, right?
Yes. Well, that ideally.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, since this is botched, you're not going to see this again. Like, they might try to fix it, but it would be because people are going to remember this, right? Because what this question really is, like, is the gaming bubble finally bursting? Is kind of a question of why is there so much crap lately? Like, why does everything seem like to be not the level of quality that we're looking for? And, you know, again, there can be a variety of answers to that, but a lot of them, some of them are, you know, industry issues, but some of them are just studio issues. And neither of those individually is capable of killing a company. I mean, look at EA. EA is freaking terrible. Like, nobody likes EA, right? Because they're, you know, they've got fairly predatory practices, and working there is apparently terrible, and so forth and so on. But they keep putting out games that people will enjoy and are going to buy. So no matter how no matter how morally bankrupt they are, they still put out a good game that,
or a good selling game.
Yeah, a product that people find is worth buying, and worth buying, you know, on every iteration. You know, we some of the other stuff. You go to Avengers. Okay, so those are poisonous industry practices around pay to win and gotcha. And by the way, apparently, as I've learned, you can make good gotcha games. You can make a good gotcha game.
Path of Exile.
Possible. Path of Exile is a gotcha game?
They have loot boxes and things that you can optionally buy into.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking Genshin Impact.
I think Genshin Impact started off great, but they recently did have some. I haven't looked into it, but I heard people in the community got really pissed off at one of the most recent additions to their gacha system.
So we'll see how that ends up going.
Yeah.
But so until recent memory, then we'll say solid gacha system, totally fine. The sort of thing. Well, I'm totally fine. Asterisk. The sort of thing that people are okay with. You know, it wasn't detrimental to the gaming experience. You know, you look at Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk came out and it was terrible, and the company's like value tanked, and it, you know, was crappy, and they're still struggling. Right. But that game is coming around, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a shame that they didn't just wait for it to be in the state where people are starting to enjoy it as they are now. It's a shame that it took so long. And they made some promises that they couldn't keep. If they had just developed it longer, they would have either known that those promises weren't makeable, or they would have been able to do it. You know, and that's unfortunate, and something that we continue to have to address until companies learn their freaking lesson. But if you just look at Cyberpunk in its essence, I guess that's not the right word at all, but it's what I'm going with. Cyberpunk is, you know, has become an experience that is it's starting to become a majority positive experience. People are, the game, a lot of the stuff's been fixed. The game itself was already good in terms of like playability and mechanics and concepts and stuff like that. It wasn't like an ideologically bankrupt, piece of IP. It was just a buggy mess. And now it's starting to come out of that, and that they're like, we're not going to be able to deliver on some of these promises, and that sucks. But people are starting to enjoy Cyberpunk, right? And it's unfortunate, but ultimately inevitable that the only way we were able to get here is by CD Projekt Red getting punched in the wallet, right? You look at, and then a couple of the other points on here. You've got the Take-Two Interactive forced It Takes Two to get pulled because of the name, and there's a trademark claim there. Well, again, that's just our copyright system, right? You need to defend your IP, or else you risk it becoming homogenized to the market, and then you lose your privilege of having your copyright or your trademark. So, yes, that also sucks, but it is an inevitable consequence of having a bad copyright system, where a company feels like it needs to take down a game because it shares the word take and two, right? But that's not that has nothing to do with the gaming industry. That would happen anywhere, I forget what company it is, but their slogan is "Eat more chicken."
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A? Yeah. They slap lawsuits on everybody who has eat more whatever. And I'm not even joking. If your slogan is like eat more grapes, eat more, potatoes, they'll come after you because that's their thing. And you have to rigorously defend your trademark or you're going to lose it. And then the very last point on this, which you didn't touch on, but it was the Halo Infinite campaign. It doesn't have multiplayer. It's not going to have multiplayer for a while. Again, a consequence of releasing a game in an unfinished state. But I'm willing to give this one a pass because the game still has multiplayer, right? It's just the traditional like deathmatch, capture the flag sort of thing instead of, the cooperative stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that Microsoft knows, that the people who enjoy playing Halo are not playing Halo for cooperative campaign experience. There are people who will play the cooperative campaign experience, but I do not think that is why you buy Halo, right? You buy Halo to get into death matches and murder people with control scheme and a UI that was revolutionary when it came out, right? And something that's been said a lot about Halo Infinite is that it goes back to like the first Halos, right? Halo 1, 2, 3, and what was it? ODST?
Yep.
You're playing that game for that experience. And that experience was getting into death matches and getting a battle rifle and a pistol that you could zoom in with and a needler because needlers are cool and, blasting people with guns. It was like the first-person shooter experience, and people want to relive the first-person shooter experience for the first time for the 78th time. So I think you can get away with that. And I think that that's okay as long as you're communicating with your player base and also meeting what they want from your game. Right? So you don't have campaign multiplayer, but I think for Halo specifically, Halo as a game that established itself on a single player campaign and a really well established, really polished multiplayer deathmatch, team match experience, I think that's okay. I think Microsoft has released a game that has met the players' expectations while still I feel like the game, let me put it to you this way. When they release the game, I don't feel like it's missing the multiplayer campaign experience. I feel like the multiplayer campaign experience is coming, right? It's not missing a feature, it's bringing you a feature later. So I think that in general, you know, while we can talk about the sins of the gaming industry until we run out of breath and pass out, because there's always going to be sinners, right? But we can also look at it and we can be like, well, you know, look at how far we've come, right? Like, look at, again, and I don't want to like be like we are now the shining city on the hill. Far from it. But at least we're not dumping our games into landfills, right? At least, you know, when there are issues in the industry, we can talk about those issues. We can even be aware of those issues. You know, like, I'm not about to point phantom fingers, but for how long was stuff going on and nobody knew anything? You know, because I'm sure it was there. There are lots of crappy people. But now, you know, we can be aware. We can have these discussions. We can be aware of, you know, working conditions, and we can, you know, try to push the industry in the direction that we want to, even if we can't like walk into a board meeting and, you know, slam my freaking Neo Geo on the table and be like, remember this? This was the golden age. But at the very least, you know, it is very true. Vote with your wallet, you know? You know, that we're like, oh man, look at these terrible, you know, terrible gaming systems and these pay to wins and gotcha systems and loot crates and loot boxes. But like, loot boxes are, like, and like, I don't know, maybe this is just hearsay, but loot boxes are dying in AAA games, right?
Yes.
Like, because after, what was it, Battlefront 2? It created such a huge storm. You haven't seen them since. You know, and you have these games that are just like, oh, you know, you can be like, oh, this game isn't very good. Well, people are going to stop patronizing it. And we've seen repeatedly that a good game, like whether it has microtransactions or not, a good game will always inherently generate more cash than a bad game. Just period. And, no, it's true. It feels vitriolic.
I don't know,
but quality games. Okay, so
I would say more often than not.
How you look at good and bad may vary. Your mileage may vary, but maybe good and bad isn't the right metric. Games that are worthy of your time and money will outperform games that aren't. They will last longer. They will have a steadier player base, a sturdier player base, and they will ultimately be more beneficial to the publishers and the developers. No matter how no matter how much, you know, cash a pay to win game will attempt to extract from you, that game will die faster. It will be more tarnished, and the people who experienced it will be more reluctant to participate in the next iteration.
I would
agree. Maybe I'm just idealizing the situation, but it feels more and more that as the public consciousness wakes up and evolves into the game space as we understand it, we are helping to mold it at the same time that it is attempting to steal our money, right? Like,
I agree with you in the sense that is the case, but I would say more often than not. And of course, everything has outliers.
I understand. It's a little recklessly optimistic, but yeah. I'm nothing if not a reckless optimist.
And that's what I think that's needed in today's day and age, excuse me. But I will, you know, just to give more credence to your point, and to support that. I would say it is nice to see that when you do have those negative, poisonous mindsets and business practices, that even when you, and again, step into like the plane of politics. But when you had people like the UK who stepped in and said like, hey, if you're gonna have basic gambling in your video games, then no, you can't just sell this to kids willy-nilly. And I think that's good because, like you stated, you know, people saw that, people spoke out about it, and it eventually reached a level of legislation that they stepped into place. And I think that is because of the positivity around people go like, hey, you should not actually have these type of mechanics in a game that is targeted towards children. Hell, probably shouldn't have it targeted towards adults either, but at least with adults, you know, you can get the benefit of the doubt of saying more often than not, they're in the right state of mind and they're adults to do with what they please with their own money, etc. So I will say in an optimistic viewpoint that yes, and I hope to see more of that as time goes on.
It's nice to know that if you alienate an entire country's worth of market, it prompts change in the gaming industry.
I'm glad
we didn't have to take any drastic steps.
I mean, the same thing with tech too, right? Like with the UK trying to force Apple to use USB Type-C rather than Lightning in their phones. Granted, that's an area where I don't think government should get involved in, but there is actual credence to argue from what Apple has marketed and has stated as the reasoning, and for certain things to basically be to be full of shite. Which, is that still technically a curse word to say shite? Yes, it is. Probably.
Yes.
Yeah. Point still stands though, full of garbage. And I've stated this in the last episode. If you're going to claim to be targeting eco-friendly solutions, yet everything else that you do is completely garbage for the ecosystem, the environment, like the physical earth, then no, shut the hell up. God dang. Ironically, I think in these last points of discussions, we kind of swept through.
Yeah,
everything.
I didn't realize that I was kind of touching on most of this stuff.
Yeah. Hey, it's all good. When a nerve is struck and Andy has his engines revving, you know we're gonna get good content, delicious content. Is there anything else you want to put out there on the show before we wrap up?
Just my game recommendation.
Okay, so before you do that, then let me also just say
Too soon.
the one of the reasons why I wanted to mention the Halo Infinite's campaign multiplayer being put off until like midway of next year is because specifically me and Ryan had been anticipating the campaign to run for our next streaming set of sessions. So we have played Halo 1, 2, 3, ODST, Reach, and have you played? I don't think we played Halo 4. Wait, is there a Halo 4?
Yeah, there's a Halo 4 and a Halo 5.
But Halo 5 is the one that is still only on Xbox, not even PC yet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I believe. That sounds correct. I don't actually know if it's correct, but it sounds right.
Yeah. Anyway, me and Ryan have played through every single Halo campaign multiplayer together on Legendary up until like Halo 5 because we have not been able to get 5 for PC because it's not on PC yet. So we were very excited to hear about Infinite having its campaign releasing at the end of this year. Only to find out that like, oh no, we won't be able to play it together until midway next year. So that kind of put a damper on our schedule. So I just kind of wanted to have that as like a little segue to show personal disdain of like, God damn it, the thing that we were looking forward to playing for a new Halo run is gonna have to wait till midway through 2022. So, but that aside, let us hear that nice juicy game recommendation, Andy.
So I have a soft spot personally for legacy board games. Board games that when you play through them, you make permanent changes to them, and your experience is always unique to your particular version of that game, but you can typically only really play it through once because there's a story being told. But I still really like them. I like going along for the narrative ride, and I've played a couple of good ones. So this week I'm specifically going to recommend Betrayal Legacy. It is a legacy version of Betrayal at the House on the Hill. If you've ever played the original Betrayal, it's a legacy version of that where you go through the history of the house. Betrayal at House on the Hill is a game about a bunch of people. Usually you play it with 4 to 6 players, I believe. Maybe it caps at 5. I think it's 3 to 5, 3 to 6. It's been a while. It's been a while since I played the original Betrayal specifically. But you go into this haunted house and you explore it, and there's some creepy stuff that happens, and you find some items and some omens. And the more omens you find, the closer you get to being haunted. And then once the haunt begins, one person typically becomes the traitor. Maybe they became the traitor on the spot. Maybe they were the traitor the whole time. They were just luring you into a false sense of security. And on rare occasions, they just freaking die, and they happen to control the monsters, right? But they're just dead, Betrayal Legacy does the same thing, except the events that occur, the items that you find, the omens you uncover, they all are keyed into your story, Somebody finds a crossbow, and it was actually a crossbow owned by their ancestor, so they have an affinity to it. And then if they kill enough people with the crossbow, God forbid, but maybe they unlock some lore about the crossbow, and that tells you a little bit more about the house, right? Because the house it's a monolith. It's always there. But what's in the house, what you can find in the house, who's in the house, that's going to change. And the original Betrayal kind of had a Phantom Legacy element to it, where you sat down at the game and if you played it regularly, you could remember, last time this happened, or you could recount a story about, some misfortune that befell everybody, or a near miss where, a dog from hell, came around and was threatening everybody in the house and you just managed to kill it. Betrayal Legacy just builds all that straight into the game, and there are actual consequences for everything that happens. You discover some insects. Well, whenever you encounter the insects in the future, they're going to be stronger because of your previous interaction with them. Parts of the house will just go away entirely, or you'll uncover parts of the house that you had no idea was there previously. The game Betrayal Legacy makes a lot of nods to the original Betrayal. So if you've played the original Betrayal, you'll be like, oh, that's where that came from, because you're building your own story. But you also might not encounter some parts of the original game, and your story will just be different as a consequence. But one of my favorite parts about the game is that, so there's a twist at the end. I'm not going to tell you what it is, obviously, but it's freaking good. But at the end of any legacy game, after you've played it enough times, the game is over. And a lot of legacy games, they let you continue to play if you want to, right? You play with this game that you've altered in this world that you've created for yourself, quote, quote. But often those experiences are kind of shallow. They don't really capture the original feeling of playing the game, or they're just sort of tacked on at the end. Like, hey, you could keep playing if you wanted to. Betrayal Legacy has none of that nonsense. In fact, I kind of feel like it has the opposite problem. Betrayal Legacy, when you're done with it, you've created your own haunted house that you can just continue to revisit and re-explore. And what's great is that, so as I've explained, there's a traitor mechanic, and there are haunts, and all the haunts are different. when you've finished the legacy element of the game, you've only experienced about half of what the game has to show you, because you can only access a certain number of haunts during the story. And once that story is over, there are other haunts that can occur. Haunts that have nothing to do with the story. Haunts that only show up because you're continuing to play, because you enjoy it. So now you're playing this game and getting, I hate to use the word content in this way, but it really is content. You get content that you had no chance of encountering previously because it just wasn't appropriate to the story. And now there's weird stuff that can happen. But it all happens in the house that you built. And you don't need to continue to play. Legacy games are typically played with the same group, right? You play with the same group over and over and over until the story is done. But once you've done that, you don't need to play with the same group anymore. You can play with anybody. You're just like, welcome to my haunted house. And then stuff will show up and you can be like, oh man, let me tell you about the time that whatever, right? And it's a really good story engine. It's got all the traditional betrayal elements to it. You've got the good guys and the surprise bad guy, and maybe they probably didn't even know that they were the bad guy, but maybe they did. I don't know. It's the only legacy game that I've played so far. I haven't played them all because there's a lot of them. I'm not made out of money over here. Geez. But it's the only legacy game that I've played where when you're done with the legacy game, it feels rewarding. It's rewarding. You're incentivized, and it's just fun to continue to play. And I would say that currently it's my favorite legacy game. It has a cool story, and it's got some, I don't want to say twists. Not like the overall plot is, kind of subject to your whims. So it's not like they can set everything in stone. It's not like watching a movie. But there are some surprises, we'll say, that made me just be like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. I think that's a good element to a legacy game, is having a little bit of unexpected elements, and Betrayal Legacy has a good way of weaving it in and out through multiple games, rather than just being at the end, just being like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect that, which is pretty traditional for most legacy games. Like something happens at the end and you're like, whoa. Betrayal Legacy sort of teases it out slowly. Very interesting. I like it. It's a good game. Plays up to 5. It needs at least 3 to 5. Always recommend playing with full players. Maximum number of players results in maximum experience. So grab some friends together and get ready to permanently tear up elements of your game and throw them in the trash. If you have a weak heart and you can't bear doing that, I would not advise playing any legacy game. But once you've stepped over that threshold where you're comfortable with destroying game elements, trust me, all for the best. All for the best. So yeah, that is my recommendation. Betrayal Legacy.
There you are. And I will add on to this. If majority, or if not all, of the Betrayal games are published by Avalon Hill Games Incorporated, by all means, feel free to sponsor Season 3 of Essence of Zen After Dark, and we'll have those copies sent to Andy to play, review earnestly.
Yo, I would be so happy you have no freaking clue, dude. Especially Avalon Hill. Avalon Hill makes some pretty good stuff.
Well, let's see what else they got underneath their belts. Let's see. Oh, I kind of like their logo, how it has changed over the years. That's kind of neat. Acquire, Betrayal Legacy, Robo Rally, Hero Quest, Betrayal at the House on the Hill, which is what Andy was actually referring to. I was showing the normal Betrayal Legacy. Nexus Ops, and they got 61 games in total. Those 6 were just the top games. That's actually a nice catalog. God dang. Oh, sorry. I saw the Axis and Allies War at Sea.
Yep.
But yeah, there you go. Again, Avalon Hill Games. If you genuinely, if you want to sponsor and have Andy give a bit more time on your games and give them a review, I'm pretty sure they'll lean towards the more positive side. But I promise you, and I assure you that anything that would be published underneath the ELZ label would be the honest opinions of the reviewer and not just subject to bias because of free games or whatever that is provided. That has been proven by one of our earlier reviews of a mixer, not a mixer, oh crap, what do you call these things? 1 second. Amplifiers. We were actually sent one amplifier by some Chinese company, and it did not work well for me, and I gave it a bad review. They since replied back and said like, "Oh, hey, it's because you're feeding it sound and data that it wasn't designed for, and therefore it sounds horrible." And our reply was, "Okay, if that is true, fine, but it does not work in the sense of the setup that I utilize for audio configurations, and therefore I'm not going to give it a good review." But that aside, this has been season 2, episode 11 of Essence of Zen After Dark. We have one more particular episode. Right now I have it planned to be a more shorter, special kind of thing where we take a look back on the entirety of season 2, as well as season 1, as well as the before days, which is the original manifestation of the podcast of Essence in After Dark, which initially started back in 2011 or 2012, I forget which, but back when I was actually in Arizona at UAT, and we utilized Google Hangouts for the podcast back then. A lot of that has been lost media. Some of it is still on the channel on YouTube, probably deep in somewhere in like the 300 or 400 some odd videos that's uploaded. But we'll just take a look back and basically showcase what we've learned and what we plan for the future. I'm very optimistic when it comes to season 3 launching in 2022. We have a lot of ideas that I would like to implement, but only time will tell if we can actually hit those goal markers. I will state in this episode, just because we're already here, I have grandiose ambitions to be more open, to be more susceptible, to be more welcoming as a community under the EOZ label, for people to be able to share their mindset. I would love to put more positivity out in the world, which is going to be very difficult because, as you probably have listened to every episode of the podcast so far, I can sometimes get very pessimistic on the titles or like the topics at hand and show my disdain for a lot of the decisions and choices that some of these companies do. And I will go ahead and say this right now. One of the biggest things I want to drive home for 2022 that I'm going to try to hold myself to a higher standard on getting out there to promote, to get people aware so they can learn, get some skill sets and really manage themselves, is the idea of, and I'm going to actually have this as a label, own your data. As we go into 2022, there is no more room for being unaware, to have a gap of ignorance about how our internet data, our internet profiles make up our identity, and how so many companies, big and small, will prey onto that data and utilize your information for their own benefit and for your own detriment. It is becoming a very large, it's always been a large problem, but the problem is only increasing. Now we have YouTubers out in the world who are actively fighting against scammers. We have newer people trying to enter the world of legislation, law, trying to ensure that people are held accountable for the misuse of your data and your information. We have people requesting research and data from companies like Facebook to see what they have learned on how their products, their software, their platforms affect people from a young age to the teenage age to the young adult age and to the late adult age. All of this is important. And the sooner that we can have everybody become far more aware and far more attached to what they put out on the internet, I think we'll have a better chance of being able to act and prevent these companies from doing malicious and poisonous business decisions and ethics and activity with the data that belongs to you. I can't promise you what we can do in the long run, but I can promise you that I'm going to do what I can in 2022 to make this more of a talking point, to make sure this is at the forefront of anything that I create or that I put out into the sphere, because I personally think this is a very important aspect as we go further into our society that is heavily dependent on technology and internet communication and interconnectivity. So that's the short, I guess, spiel of what I'm going to be trying to do for 2022 and what I hope to probably not accomplish, but to get something rolling. If I can help at least one person be more mindful, if I can ensure that someone who is the age of 12, make sure that they know what they put on the internet will live forever, so that some type of decision that a stupid kid will make on the internet does not come back to bite them on the ass 20 years down the road, because they were young, stupid, and impressionable. So that's going to do it for the show. Everybody, I will see you all in the season 2 finale, episode 12, sometime in the future. If I don't speak with you before or after that, be sure to have a fantastic holiday. For those of my or our Jewish listeners and viewers, I hope you're having a fantastic Hanukkah. I hope you all are spending time with family. And for those who celebrate other holidays such as winter solstice, Christmas, Kwanzaa, and everything else underneath the sun, just enjoy time with your family. Be thankful for the fact that you woke up and that you can see the people that you care about, that you can try to make tomorrow a better day for yourself, and just try to think more positive. So much is going on in the world that is very chaotic, very negative, and very scary. And to be fair, with everything going on, we all need a point to just pause, breathe out, relax, and just enjoy what we can in today's day and age. So that'll do it for me. Andy, any closing remarks?
No.
That'll do it for the show, everybody. Love you much. Catch you next time.
Good night, everybody. See you, nerds.
Love that start. No. Essence of Zen After Dark is recorded by and for geeks and nerds alike. The intro and outro songs were provided by ProLeader, who you can find at proleader.bandcamp.com. That is PROLETER.bandcamp.com. If you have suggestions for topics you want to see on the show, then feel free to drop by discord.chat/Essence of Zen and join the community and give us said suggestions. Thank you.